okay? The middle class on the planet right now is evenly divided between the developed nations, the old world nations, and the emerging nations, the new world nations, which is pretty phenomenal. And obviously those trends tip heavily in favor of the new world emerging markets as they continue to urbanize and continue to grow their economies. And what that means is, from a corporate standpoint, the opportunities are now spread out all over the globe. Now in the US, we tend to be a little myopic, right? We're the big economy, we're what matters. And we do have a lot of great companies here, but if you look at the top 20 companies on the planet, here's where they end up being located. Half of them are in the new world emerging economies, and half of them are in the old world developed economies. All right, so when it comes to growth, we need to look to the new world for growth. Here's some quantification. Between 1996 and 2005, the emerging markets contributed 53% of global economic growth. The US, 20%, Europe, 14%. Over the last 5 years, right, while we've been in repair, the emerging markets contributed 83% of global economic growth. We contributed 6%, as did Europe. What if Europe hadn't contributed any growth at all over the last 5 years? Would the globe have still grown? The answer is yes. As in terms of a share of global GDP, we're now at about parity. So the new world is 50% of global GDP. In 2025, which isn't that far off, the new world will be 53% of global GDP. So the old world continues to fade in terms of its economic significance. Here's the other story. Our debts are their assets. Here's where the emerging markets fit on this chart, and here's where their star, China, fits on their start. On this chart. We are overburdened, and quite frankly, they are underburdened. And so when you map the new world into the old world, and this, I was very excited about this. I started yelling and screaming and jumping up and down in the restaurant when I figured this out. Here is the debt levels that I've shown you for the old world. 90% is obviously the speed break. Here's where the emerging markets show up. Here's where global debt levels really are at the government level. So what this tells you is, even with the US, going into disrepair this far out and being a huge contributor to the amount of debt on the planet, we still then just reach that threatening threshold of 90%. Currently, we are well below that 90% threshold. In fact, what this means is there's probably capacity on the planet to take on even more government debt, because the new world is so underlevered, even if the old world is levered. Okay, so we are all on this global quest for prosperity. How do you measure that? Well, let's measure wealth. Okay, this is a chart going back to 2000, and what it shows you is that in North America, we have yet to reclaim the amount of wealth we had pre-recession, right? We're still catching back up to where we were. That is the same in Europe. Europe is less wealthy today than it was pre-recession. Add in the emerging markets, they are wealthier today than they were pre-recession, and by such a wide margin that even though we had the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression in 2008, global wealth is at a record high 5 years later. Pretty amazing. So these financial crises, these issues with Europe, etc., are really speed bumps and nothing more, some big, some small, on this global road to prosperity. So be optimistic. The new world opportunities greatly exceed the old world threats. Europe hasn't been the engine of global growth for hundreds of years anyway. The US is one bold president away from fixing its problems. If you look at the global debt load, not only is it manageable, but it's probably got room for expansion. And while we had the greatest financial event since the Great Depression in 2008, we're at record global prosperity in 2011. So in my opinion, we are in the early innings of perhaps the greatest era of prosperity the world has ever seen. Of course, it's all just a matter of perspective.